नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते नारायणाय। ॐ नमो भगवते नारायणाय। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। अनन्तसंसारसमुद्रतार नौकायिताभ्यां गुरुभक्तिदाभ्यां वैराग्यसाम्राज्यपूजनाभ्यां नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्यां। अञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशमक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करम्। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। The first three chapters that we had seen in the last three sessions were the glory of Parabrahman, Rupa Varnanam, Bhakta Lakshanam and Bhakti Lakshanam. Today we will see the eightfold discipline of yoga, or famously known as ASHŞÁNGA Yoga, as upaya to reach Brahman or the Parabrahman. The 45 slokas from the beginning of this chapter, chapter number 4, to the end of the 7th chapter, they correspond to the second book of Srimad Bhagavata Mahabharata, which deals with the cosmic evolution, the different cosmic forms of the Lord and the different modes of worshipping them, the results of such worship. This Dasakam describes how the eightfold discipline of yoga can help an aspirant to gain salvation. Bhattacharya prays for mental competence and physical fitness to help expound this profound topic. Indeed, it is very profound, highly philosophical. Kalyatam mama kurushvatavatim kalyate bhavaduvasanam yaya spashtamashtavidha yogacharya puttaya sutava tushtimapnuyam. Bhagavane Guruvayurupa, bestow on me the requisite health by which your worship would be performed. Once again, I am not asking for health for my sake, but I need to do the worship. For that, my health has to be in good condition. I shall then clearly win your grace very soon by the perfect practice of the ASHඨANGA Yoga, which will condition my mind so that I can aim towards Parabrahman. Why did Bhattacharya seek this path? The fire of yoga destroys all the sins bonding us, gives us unstinted devotion and spiritual knowledge, slating us to the path of liberation from the worldly ties. I would therefore, albeit my very limited understanding of yoga, attempt to describe some preliminary ideas of what is meant by yoga. Most of you may have been inducted, or many may be more informed than me on the subject. But for the benefit of others like me who may have very minimal understanding, I would like to give some basics or introductions. More than half the time of this session, if not a little more, may be required to brief about Ashtanga Yoga, Patanjali Yoga Sutra and the like. Then the remaining 14 slokams may take the remaining time. As you will notice, they will practically be rushed through because of the type of content. While Bhattacharya uses 7 slokam for these 8 aspects of angas, or I would say ashtangas, I will preamble them all and then quickly sing and give very brief meaning. I am somewhat humbled to talk about Ashtanga Yoga while one of my 2 brothers who regularly listen to this yajna from India is a well-informed yoga teacher. He is known as Yogacharya Sridharan. Many of you may have met him. He is also called the Dronacharya. He is trustee of Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. Many of you may have met with him in India or while he was visiting the US a few years ago. He had done quite some work. He has been a yoga teacher for almost like 40 years. He had done quite some work on Patanjali Sutras. He has written lectures and talks, and around the world he has traveled and given talk on this. Recognized by global yoga institutes and centers as an Acharya and the disciple of Yoga Purusha Krishnamacharya and his son Desikacharya. I am conscious that my knowledge is bookish and extremely limited, but this brief attempt is in the context of explaining Bhattacharya's treatment of the Ashtanga Yoga quintessentially. If the mankind has been blessed to immensely benefit for several millennia from yoga, it is all thanks to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali Mahamuni, which are a collection of 196 Sanskrit aphorisms. Sutra is an aphorism. They are classified in 4 parts. The entire Yoga Sutras, 196, are classified under 4 padas. So Yoga Sutram contains Samadhi Pada, Sadhana Pada, Vibhuti Pada, and Kaivalya, or inner freedom. On the theory that, and also the practice of yoga, many Westerners who spend their lifetime researching Patanjali Yoga Sutras have placed the time of compilation of these sutras to be between 2500 to 2400 years backwards from today. They further write that Patanjali Mahamuni synthesized and organized knowledge about yoga from many other older traditions. But let's look at the Sanatana Dharma concept, and mythologically the age of Yoga Sutras is several millennia old. Patanjali was one of the 18 Siddha Purushas in the Tamil Saiva Siddhanta tradition in the service of Lord Shiva. He was one of the 8 principal gurus inducted by Lord Shiva. There are varying accounts of multiple names of Patanjali. There are so many Patanjalis, one grammarian and the other Yoga Sutra Chakravarti. Let's for instance just only reserve ourselves to this Yoga Sutra Chakravarti and not talk about the grammarian. As to this Patanjali Yogi, a millennia old Siddhanta tradition or a Saiva Siddhanta tradition holds that Patanjali learned yoga along with 7 other disciples from the great yogic guru Nandideva, a permanent attaché of Lord Shiva, as stated in Tirumula's Thirumandiram, who belong to the same time according to the Saiva Siddhanta tradition. Nandi Arul Petra Nadarai Nadidin Nandigal Nalvar Shiva Yoga Mamuni Mandru Thuluda Patanjali Vyagramaryan River Yennodu Yenmarumagum. This is how Tirumular describes Patanjali and Vyagrapada. Tirumular says, we sought the feet of the Lord God Shiva, who graced Nandikeshwara, and through them and also directly from Shiva, 4 of us, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara, Shiva Yoga Magamuni, Patanjali, Vyagrapada, and I, Tirumular, we were these 8 who had the benefit of learning from Nandikeshwara. These 8 are considered in the tradition as the Adigurus, as I said, because of direct Upadesham. In fact, when you see the last in the couplet, Yennodu, Tirumular says, including me there were 8. That's how he puts the mudra there. Some of you are aware of this great song by Dikshitar, Ananda Natana Prakasham. This name Patanjali is stated alongside the name of Vyagrapada, another great mythical Mahapurusha at the service of Lord Shiva. Vyagrapada was doing Pushpa Kainkaryam to Chidambaram Nataraja Peruman and got wounded in his legs doing the Kainkaryam. So when Shiva Peruman sees this, he blesses him with the feet of tiger, the large feet of tiger. So that Vyagrapada starts practically flying up on the trees and he was collecting flowers, Pushpa Kainkaryam for Shiva, plucking flowers from the top of the tallest trees, untouched by even by honeybees. That's Vyagrapada. If you have visited Chidambaram, you may have seen the iconography of Vyagrapada with the tiger feet on one side, Patanjali on the other side. There is a great temple which many of you may know, Thalasayana Perumal, situated between Kolumangudi and Karaikal, not too far, within about 5 miles, one of the 108 Divyadeshams of Mahavishnu, which was visited by Patanjali and Vyagrapada concurrently to praise Mahavishnu in their concept of ASHඨANGA Yoga. And at their special request, Perumal gave them the darshanam as Srirangam Ranganatha Swami. Since these people could not go to Srirangam, in the Thalasayana Perumal temple, these 2 people were given special darshanam as though the Perumal was Srirangam Ranganatha Swami. Well, see how blessed are the devotees of Sanatana Dharma to be beneficiaries of such treasures of Puranas. On our subject at hand, let's focus. Simplistically put, yoga means controlling the manifold activities of the mind. அலைபாயும் மனதை ஒரு நிலைக்கு கொண்டு வருவது. Yogaha chitta vrittihi nirodha. Only by intense and long practice under the direction of a proper acharya, because everybody thinks that they can do yoga by listening to somebody on the YouTube and stretch their hands and call it. Different names are given. There are even yogas called ice cream yoga and all. Let's not go there. But it has to be learned from a proper acharya, a true master, who has to have total sacrificial mentality to teach. And that is the kind of a master who can give you the proper Ashtanga Yoga. With a sense of detachment, can an extrovert mind be controlled in its unending meanderings? Contextually, I'll be remiss if we do not pay homage to the greatest Yoga Purusha who is currently responsible for even some of the sutras who have come out. Thiruvaiyaru Krishnamacharya is pretty much synonymous with contemporary yoga spanning centuries. Fernando Ruiz, the famous international columnist, wrote about great Acharya a dozen years ago, calling him the father of modern yoga on all yoga teachers, and he literally called the inventor of Patanjali Yoga. In other words, Patanjali Yoga as it was, thanks to Krishnamacharya, we now know what is this Ashtanga Yoga, especially the various tenets of this yoga. Hatha Yoga is the specialty of Krishnamacharya. As we now begin to unravel and understand yoga, he is well known over the world as the master and Yogacharya. But several masters whose names you may be knowing, but I don't want to mention, in particular I would like to mention his son, Deshikaracharya, who also has been a great contributor. Between these 2 teachers, Sridharan learned and was managing trustee of the Yoga Mandiram, now serves as in the board. There are 8 steps or sopana or limbs for yoga as Patanjali delineates. Yama niyama asana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyana samadhaya. These are the 8 angas. The explanations for each of these terms would take about 20 to 25 hours and I would still be feeling inadequate. Hence would simply give one-liners or two-liners for a quick understanding of each of these 8 sopanas. Let us look at these 8 angas. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhaya. In fact, these are also the steps, step-by-step ladder. You can't jump from one to the other. Yama, Patanjali defines Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigrahaya, Maha constitutes set of moral disciplines. Ahimsa, non-violence, Satya, truthfulness, Asteya, abstention from stealing, Brahmacharya is specifically chastity in thought, word and deed. That's all Brahmacharya. Aparigraha, Mano Vakkayadinda Maduva Karmadalli. You must have heard this famous Pranams in Indudaya. So in sum, Yama is a purifier of mind without which one cannot master yoga. Niyamas. According to Patanjali, Saucha Santosha, Tapaha, Swadhyayaha, Ishvara, Pranidhanani, Niyamaha. Niyama is defined by Patanjali as this. These are observances to be followed perpetually. They include cleanliness of the body and mind, contentment, mortification or penance, study, profound meditation focusing on the Lord Supreme. These are essential to lead unto successful completion of the advanced steps such as dhyana, because that's our 7th anga, meditation, dharana, concentration, and ultimately the pinnale is samadhi or absorption. The 3rd anga is asana. Sthira sukham asanam. He gave an aphorism, very simple. Make it comfortable. It should be stable. It should be firm. Patanjali says it should be firm but relaxed, comfortable posture for study practice of yogic exercises. Asana means 2 aspects. The place on which the yogi sits to do the asana and the posture in which the yogi sits, actually that's an asana. With the help of an acharya, once the posture is selected, the next anga, pranayama, can be practiced. That's the 4th anga. Pranayama, as defined by Patanjali, Pranayama swasa praswasa yoho gati vichedaha. Simplistically put, breath control. Pranayama involves the most important of Ashtangas, and an expert can explain the wonderful techniques and terms associated with what Patanjali envisaged and laid down. Here my attempt is somewhat primitive and would touch on the simple method of pranayama. 3 controls. Puraka is inhalation, Kumbhaka, holding the breath inside, Rechaka, exhalation. Bhattadri mentions most of these names in flying speed in the next 8 slokam. That's why I'm trying to put them all together in one place so that you can get an understanding, appreciation. Then we can go to slokam by slokam and do a quick meaning. So Puraka, inhalation, Kumbhaka, holding, and we also talked about Rechaka, which is exhalation. Yoga Shastra explains the 2 nadis or nerve currents, we call it, contained in the spinal column, Ida and Pingala. Ida left and Pingala right, and the central passage known as Sushumna, which is usually blocked in all those like me who have gone through no yogic exercises. Sushumna can be only evoked when you really get into the yoga posture and learning it properly. Some of you may have heard the terms Muladhara, Kundalini, Swatisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Ajna. Reaching finally the Sahasrara Padma, the lotus with 1,000 petals situated in the center of the brain. That is where the Sahasrara is there. As it reaches the higher centers, yoga produces various degrees of spiritual enlightenment. The object of pranayama, as I said earlier, is to rouse the kundalini and control the prana, the vital energy, to be able to appreciate the entire process. In sum, by practicing pranayama, the covering of the mind by rajas and tamas gets removed, and the mind gets fixed on one object. This gives the aspirant more competence to climb the advanced ladders of yoga like Pratyahara and Dharana. What is Pratyahara? Svavishayasa samprayoge chitta swarupa anukaraha iva indriyanam pratyaharaha. Withdrawing the senses from external objects, bringing them under perfect control of the mind is called pratyahara. Mastery of the senses is essential to concentration of mind on the single subject, maybe the single object. In this case, Parabrahman should be the only object as far as pratyahara is concerned. Dharana. Deshabandha chittasya dharana means concentration. Bringing the mind back from where it has turned. The mind meanders all over the place. From outward to inward is actually dharana. Bring alaipaayum manade ullirthal. Just to bring it inside to oneself so as to hold on the lotus of the heart. Dharana is the forerunner of dhyana or meditation. Dhyana. Tattva pratyaya ekatanata dhyanam. It is in this state of yoga, meditation, that devotion to the Lord, born out of pure love, prema bhakti, reaches its zenith in dhyana, which is the seventh anga. The eighth is the final stage where every yogi wants to attain, samadhi. Tadeva arthamatra nirbhasam swarupa sunyam iva samadhihi. Absorption. When the mind with unbroken concentration performs only one function of focusing itself on one subject, in this instance on Paramatma, and stays without any other support by its own power of meditation, it's called samadhi. When all three aspects, concentration, meditation, namely dharana, dhyana and samadhi, they just get together. Concentration, meditation, absorption. You repeat it again. These are the three things are brought to bear on the Brahman. The state is known as samyama. And when the yogi masters this samyama, self-realization takes place and the yogi attains liberation or stays a jivan mukta or a liberated soul, about which Bhattadri talks about what the jivan mukta does and what are his options. Once he has reached the samadhi state, it doesn't go there. It goes further. He has to make choices as far as realization and liberation are concerned. That is why this particular chapter is important. With all this in mind, Bhattadri makes his fervent appeal to Guru Vairapa, give me the adequate health, appropriate health so that I can worship you. In the next sloka, he describes Yama and Niyama. I have already given you all the Ashtangas and the details, so I am going to skip and skim between the second and seventh. Mostly I will be reciting the sloka and giving you two-lined meaning. That's all. Brahmacharya dudadadi biryamai aplavadi niyamai cha pavita urmahe drudamami sukhasanam pankajatyam aviva bhavat prabha. Hare Krishna. The aspirants to the yoga discipline, we, the poet being the main aspirant here, but he uses the plural, we, for all of us. We shall observe the yama and niyama as stated above, get our minds purified in the process, select a comfortable posture, that is asana, to sit and settle down. One cannot get rid of the threefold miseries without your divine grace, attaining which is our aim. Krishna, I am sure we will achieve it soon. Please bless me. This actually talks about yamam, niyamam and asanam. That's the second sloka. Third one. Taramantaranu chintya santatam pranavayum abhiyamya nirmala indriyani vishaya gadapagrit yasmage bhavadu vasanonmukha. Krishna, cleansed of all impurities by constantly revolving in our minds the Pranama mantra, the syllable Om, and controlling the life breath, and then after withdrawing the senses from their respective objects, we shall stay intent upon your worship and meditation of your form. This sloka explains pranayamam and pratyahara, which we already talked about. Here it is pretty essential to mention a few worthy aspects as to the greatness of Om, the Pranava mantra. Om is a combination of two vowels, A and U, with an anuswara, referred to as Akara, Bukara, Makaratmakam, representing Vishnu, Shiva and Brahma respectively. Om is the starting bija or the seed mantra for every other mantra. This was the first sound which emanated during the cosmic evolution, which we are going to see later. It is God and Brahman, the essence of all Vedas and Upanishads, known as Taraka Mantra, as it acts as a raft to cross the ocean of Bhavasagara or ocean of Samsara. Chanted by one at the end of one's life, Om can become Karna Mantra, or even pronounced by someone else unto the ear of someone while drawing their last breath. It is also supposed to bestow salvation without any effort at all. That is the power of this Taraka Mantra. Pronounced as Om, from the phonetic point of view, Swami Vivekananda beautifully says, A is the root sound, the key, pronounced without touching any part of the tongue or palate. Nothing touches. Represents the last sound in the series, and U rolls from the very root to the end of the sounding board of the mouth. Thus, Om represents the whole phenomena of sound producing. This is courtesy Swami Prabhavananda of Sri Ramakrishna Order, who had compiled Vivekananda's lectures. Aspute vapushite prayatnato Daraye madhishanam muhu Tena bhakti rasa mantra artada Udvagema bhavadangri chintaka. Bhattacharya explains here Dharana and Dhyana. With considerable efforts, we will fix our minds on your image, which is still blurred due to our distractions. We constantly go through distractions, so we are unable to even get your rupam properly. When we want to really see you, the mind is not able to get that rupam unless we are forcibly in front of a murtam. Because of that, we will continue to meditate on your Padarvindam and will experience the sentiment of devotion and melting of the mind purely by the process of constant meditation of your Divya Rupam. Pratyatanaha muhuhu muhuhu. This is what he says in the slokam. We will try and do it again and again and again and again. That is dharana. Bhattacharya says that dharana should lead us to dhyana. Since your Thiruvadi will give us the bhakti rasa and therefore daya at heart. Udvahema bhakti rasam antarardratam cha. In the next sloka, he feels that Bhagavat Swarupam will set in minds. Visputa vayava veda sundaram Tvadvapushruchira chila navasa Ashramam manasi chintayamage Dhyana yoga nirataspadashraya. Since we are constantly meditating on you, Hare Krishna, as we trust in you totally, it is easier for us to constantly bring your beautiful Tirumeni, your exquisite form in our mind, as though you came into our hearts without even a proper invitation, without our even summoning you. What we were doing is simply we brought your Tirumeni in our mind and started meditating. Then lo and behold, you sat in our heart. That's what Bhattacharya says. It is a reflex reaction by Bhagavan. Without my even beckoning him, he comes and settles in my heart. This has been practically taken from Suka's mouth. Bhattacharya generously used this. Suka says, sage Narada says to Vyasa. Then Vyasa asked him about his Loka Sancharam and his prior birth, etc. Narada, since he is the forerunner and is an inductor for Vyasa, he tells Vyasa the story of his life. Ragayataha swaviryani tirthapada priyasravaha Ahuta ivame shigram darshanam yati chetasi. This is Bhagavatam. Bhagavan Sri Krishna, whose glories are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart. As if I summoned him, the minute I started giving him these Karnamritam stories, he comes and sits in my heart. As soon as I begin to chant his holy activities, precisely the exact words, coinage was used by Bhattacharya in this previous sloka. Dhyayatam sakala murtimi drushi Ummishan madurata hridatmanam Sandramodara Sarupamamtaram Brahma Rupamai Deva Bhasate. Guruvayurappa, Bhagavane, he calls him Ai. Hey, hello, Ai. This is the way he beckons Guruvayurappa. For those who meditate on your Sakala aspect of your form, Sakala Murtim Idrishim. This is the coinage he uses in this slokam, as you may observe. Sakala Murtim Idrishim, meaning Sakala aspect of your form, and thus enchanted by the enhancing sweetness of its splendor. One may wonder, most of you have been exposed to Gita and Puranas and various lectures. Is it not that we constantly aim towards Nishguna Brahma Swarupam? Nirguna Brahma Swarupam is the one which we all aim towards. But here he is talking about Sakala aspect of your form. So the essence of the eternal bliss becomes felt through the Sakala aspect. This, according to Bhattadri, is Samadhi. Why did Bhattadri talk about Sakala Brahman or Sakala Brahma Tattvam, while the goal is to dwell our minds ultimately into Nishkala Brahman through Samadhi? When this question troubled very many scholars, a great saint in Ramakrishna order, Tapasyananda, explained that quite often a vast majority of people are all the time oppressed by sorrows, constantly bothered by material sorrows, like us, mentally and physically. At the same time, our selfishness and ego do not leave them, and our long acquired vasanas do not disappear that quickly. Or even the mental impressions, dogma, and refusal to believe in Paramatma, all these things oppresses the individual every now and then. So what happens is, if they stand in the forefront, resulting in the lack of purity of mind, quality that is so essential even to understand the concept of Nishkala Brahman or the unmanifested nature of the Lord, let alone trying to focus their minds on that Brahman. Therefore, to make concentration of the mind possible for such ignorant people like me, it has become necessary that Brahman has to be attributed a form, Kala, attributing a form with all physical features like hands, feet, head, face. So when we do Keshadignanam, we are able to specifically focus on each of those limbs and all other requisite attributes to match them, for the sake of providing an object for one's dhyana or meditation. This form of Brahman or Parabrahman, the personification of beauty and charm with a body, organs, is known as Sakala Brahman or Sakala Brahma Tattvam, as opposed to Nishkala Brahma Tattvam. From this point, further meditation and intense surrender takes the devotee to the realization of Nishkala Brahman. Such realization is known as Parabrahma Sakshatkara, which Acharya has used it quite often in the Vedantic lectures, or otherwise known as Samadhi. So if you look at Samadhi, the ASHඨANGA, the eighth Anga, it is equivalent to Parabrahma Sakshatkara. It is now clear from Bhattadri that worship of Sakala Brahman can thus lead us to Samadhi. Tatsamasvadana rupinim sthitim Tatsamadhimai Vishwanayaka Ashrita Punarata Parichuta Varabe Mahisha Dharanadigam. Bhagavane, oh Lord of the universe, he calls him Lord of the universe. If we slip from that exalted state or impediments come in the way of my progress, Bhattadri gets a little worried. Yes, I reached Samadhi, the eighth Anga, after so much of struggle of doing Ashtanga Yoga. But after that, what happens is, because of my distractions, I slip from that very highest pedestal. When it happens as an impediment in the way of my progress of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I shall keep repeatedly chanting the most auspicious Pranama mantra, Om and Om and Om and Om, in front of you. Thereby, I will regain my lost position. Whatever I lost, I will be able to just capture back. On the ladder of Yoga Samadhi, if I have slipped several ladders down, I will still be put up to the eighth Anga or Samadhi. Guruvayurappa, please bless me to achieve that Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What could be those impediments that could pull someone who has reached the Samadhi stage? Isha Upanishad and Kena Upanishad have answers for this. When I try to surf through all over the place, fortunately these are the two Upanishads we had answers exactly as to the impediments that will be for the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. There are 4 impediments. Laya, or also Nidra, or sleep. Lapse of mental state into sleep because of failure to rest on the Absolute. The mind meanders all over the place. Vikshepa. There is constant distraction and confusion because of our clinging to the material world. Kashaya, not Kashaya, Kashaya. Kashaya is attachment thanks to vasanas or impressions of sensual enjoyments raising their heads. Rasaswadaha, that's the 4th one. The knower and the knowledge staying as 2 different entities. There is no merger between the knower and knowledge. The knower thinks that he knows a lot and knowledge stands out of him. Thereby he is not able to get the Brahma Vidya inside him. Thereby this becomes an impediment to keep him in the Samadhi mode. Ittam abhyasana nirbhalollasat tvatparatma sukha kalpitotsava mukta bhakta kula maulitam kada sancharema sukha naradadivati. Since we regularly and constantly practice the 3 important yogas, Dharana, Dhyanam and finally Samadhi, we are able to see the Brahma Swarupam elaborately. Because of this Anubhava, we will reach the Ananda or Parabrahma or bliss to join the ranks of Sri Sukha Brahmam and Narada. That is what our friend Bhattadri says here. He is so confident that he has come to the point of Samadhi, thereby he will be able to reach the bliss, and the bliss is equivalent to what Narada and Sukha Brahmam have already reached as Jivan Muktas. At the end of the 8th sloka, he is very pleased. He has also arrived at the summum bonum of Advaita philosophy. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmevana Aparaha is Bhashitam. Meaning, Brahman alone is real. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, and the world is an illusion or Maya or relatively unreal. The distinction between the various philosophies, Advaita, Advaita, Vishitta, Advaita is very quintessentially small. The distinction is only the way it is looked at. The world is an illusion, but it is also relatively unreal. In other words, it is real, but it is not real. The Jiva is nothing else but Brahman. Jiva may look outside, but it is still Brahman. For every individual, it is said there are 3 bodies. The Karana Sharira, called the causal body, Linga Sharira or Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, and the Sthula Sharira, which is the physical body. What is visible to the eyes is only the Sthula Sharira. The way we look at, the way anything else is being looked at. Bhattadri explains this further in a couple of slokas. Tatsamadhi vijaye tuya punar mangshu mokshara kramenava yoga vasyamanilam shadasrayi unnayatvajastu shumnayasanai. Hey Paramatma, he calls him Ajaha. Hey Ajaha, birthless one, man, the person who has no birth. Every yogi who has conquered the art of attaining the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is the permanent dhyana of you inside, if he is desirous of Sadhyo Mukti or Krama Mukti, there are 2 different paths. A Jivan Mukta has to choose his option, Sadhyo Mukti or Krama Mukti. Even after attaining the Samadhi state, he only becomes a Jivan Mukta. He has to choose his upaya to actually get the liberation to reach the lotus feet. Gaining salvation gradually is Krama Mukti, whereas instantly it is Sadhyo Mukti. Instant. He does pranayama, thus controlling his vital prana slowly through the Shushumna Nadi and then through the 6 mystical centers, Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Vishuddhi and Ajna, and brings it to the center of the eyebrow in Siddhasana. Linga deham api sandhya jannato liyate tvai pare niragraha. Linga deham api sandhya jannato liyate tvai pare niragraha. Udvaloka kudukidu murtadas sardhameva karanai niriyate. Here he gives a trick. When the yogi brings his prana to the center of the brows and desirous of nothing else, he brings it here, identifies himself with you after relinquishing his linga sharira, and thus attains Sahijya Mukti. But if that yogi is in Krama Mukti by routing himself through Brahmalokam, etc., etc., he proceeds with his linga sharira and Pancha Prana, Manas, Buddhi, Dashendriyas, Chittam, Ahankaram to Brahmarantram through his head. Kapalam Variya, he really reaches to all those places. Because this is actually a Krama Mukti, orderly. Agni Vasara Balaksha Pakshakai Uttarayana Jushaja Daivatai Prabhito Ravi Padam Bhavat Paro Modavandruva Padanta Vihate. It's kind of very complex. Some of you may feel bored, but it is essential that you know what are the two roots. Thiruvaiyaru, a devotee, the yogi is now taken care of by Agni, daylight, Shukla Paksha Devatas, and Deva in charge of Uttarayana Kalam, and delivered to Surya Lokam from here, from where he happily will take the journey to Dhruva Lokam, where he is going to spend some time. It's like going from one place to the other, like a Kshetra Yatra above the earth. For many of you, the whole process of delivery seems very complicated. As we all know of life in this planet, struggles and relief by way of death. As no one here at least knows about the journeys we undergo after we are declared dead. But these highly philosophical discussion and description by Bhattadri in this manner is with the sanctions of Upanishads and Puranas, which have repeatedly talked about this, which describe a Jivan Mukta's journey as he or she has desired while alive. Really smart ones are those who desire Sadhyo Mukti or instantaneous liberation direct to the feet of the Lord. But for the record, Bhattadri continues in Sloka 12 the journey further. I'll only just do the song and then go to the next one. Asti tota maharalaye yada shesha vakradahanushmanatyate yiyate bhavadupashrayastada vedasa padamata puraivava. Bhattadri says from Dhruvaloka the transition is to Maharlokam, from then to Brahmalokam or Satyalokam. Before or after oppression from Visha Agni emanating from Adisesha. So one can duck that Adisesha's Agni and then directly reach Satyaloka. Tatra vata vapadedava vasan prakrita pralaya yeti muktatam swechaya kalupura vimuchyate Samvibhadya Jagadanda Mojasa. Thiruvaiyaru, from Satyalokam, your Bhakta reaches Brahmaloka or Vishnuloka as desired and get his moksha or liberation during Pralayam. We are going to talk about Pralayam tomorrow. And by piercing the Brahmanda, the concept is the Brahmanda will be pierced by the Bhakta because he is a Jivan Mukta and he will become the Mukta using his Yoga Balam to reach the feet of Paramatma. Tasya chakshiti payo maho nilat yomagat prakriti saptakavriti tattadhatmakadaya vishansuki yadite padamanamrutam vibho. It's a beautiful slogan. How the cosmic sphere or Brahmanda is pierced by the Jivan Mukta with that yogic power is described in this sloka. The term or expression Mahat refers to Mahat Tattvam plus Ahankara. Mahat Tattvam plus Ahankaram is known as Mahat. Isn't it strange? There is something plus. In Sanskrit, there is a figure of speech called Upalakshana. Upalakshana to be translated in English is like Sinagdosh, we call it. implying something which is really not there, not really expressed, but which is there, which is the implication of something additional to a similar object. When only one is mentioned or a part of the whole is mentioned, you need to really make an anumanam of the entire thing. An individual is mentioned, entire species is not mentioned, but by pure mention of that, the Mahat says Mahat Tattvam plus Ahankara. We all would have by now known Brahman cannot be perceived directly. It can only be conceived as being concealed by an egg called Brahmanda. The primordial egg or Brahmanda. The Brahmanda possesses 7 angas or limbs or constituents or sheets. உரைகள்னு சொல்லுவோம். சப்த பிரகாரம்னு ஸ்ரீரங்கத்துக்கு சொல்ற மாதிரி there are 7 sheets after which you see Paramal there. Here also there are 7 sheets in Brahmanda Loka in order to get to the Brahmanda. Prithvi is one sheet, Jalam, water is another, Tejas, which is fire, Vayu, air, Akasham, ether. 6th one made up of Mahat Tattvam, which I just said. Sometimes it looks like anachronism, Mahat plus Ahankaram. And the last one, Prakriti, or primordial matter. These are the 7 sheets which obstruct the Brahman from our ordinary point of view. Bhattacharya lists them all above and concludes that the yogi, having attained the Samadhi state, is capable of tearing all these sheets and he enters the Brahmanda so that he can reach you straight there, because there is nothing beyond Brahmanda. Your greatness is beyond description, Krishna, words and thoughts. Here comes the conclusion. After describing the various paths a yogi takes for attaining salvation, Bhattacharya reiterates his non-returnability to the ocean of transmigration or samsara. Achiradiga tinidrisham brajan vidyutim na bhajate jagatpate sachitatmaga bhavadgunodaya ucharanti manilesa bahimam. Bhagavane, Lokanayaka, as explained in the previous 4 lokams about the journey, O the Lord of Panchapranas, those who attain the ultimate goal of salvation by going through the regions of the presiding deities, Agni, day, bright half of the moon, northern migration, sun, etc., etc., they will never face the danger of displacement from the status of oneness with Brahman, and there is no question of any coming back. One who has understood Brahman will become only Brahman. Simplistically translated for our ordinary understanding, once we reach the Swarupam of Brahman, there is no birth, there is no death. We are not going to come back like a donkey or a dog or something else. I am not saying anything is inferior, but we don't have any birth. That's what Bhattacharya says in a very highly philosophical way of putting it together. After this Samadhi stage, after this Jivan Mukta has chosen his path of how he is going to get his Saijam and go to the lotus feet, there is no returning back. There is no coming back. That is why he says, I have to understand the Brahman, because Brahman will become only Brahman. The Brahman does not repeat the cycle of births and deaths, because I have become Brahman. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavet, Nasa Punar Avartate. The Jiva or self that shines in the body, the abode of the 5 Panchapranas or vital airs, is none other than you, Krishna, Parabrahma. You are also the supreme consciousness bliss, Satchit Ananda. The river once flows into the sea, becomes one with the sea without return. Have you ever seen a river having gone into the sea, deciding to go back and say, I am going to become a river? It's not. Similarly, a Jivatma, when it has transited, gone through all these pains and perils, finally has become a Jivan Mukta to reach Paramatma. Paramatma would absorb him, he will never let him go. So if he is ocean and we are the rivers, we go unto him, we never go back. That's what he summarizes here. Jivatman dissolves unto the ocean called Paramatma. Before I conclude, I deliberately want to clarify some questions that were posed to me when Bhakti Yoga was talked about, and the need to reach that through Ashtanga Yoga in this context. The idea is not to say Bhakti Yoga is great, thereby you can skip Ashtanga Yoga. Quite often we come to the 9 facets of Bhakti, say the Sankirtanam is the best of this 9 facets. It doesn't mean the other 8 facets are useless, and people who do that are not going to get to Paramatma. These are 9 different routes. If you really are so lazy and you can do nothing else, you can choose Sankirtanam and still Bhagavan will be there standing in attention to take you along with him. That is how I say in Sankirtanam lectures. Same way here, when the Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are conflicted, there is no conflict. Given my limitations, I cannot answer that heavily philosophical question whether Ashtanga is the correct route or direct Bhakti Yoga is the correct route. But I can definitely direct your attention to Gita Vakyams for you to review, analyze and answer yourself this very profound question. Arurukshohu muner yogam karma karanamuchyate yogarudasya tasyiva samakaranamuchyate. In Dhyana Yoga, Krishna says to Arjuna, for one who is a neophyte to the Ashtanga Yoga system, like me, I am a neophyte. So he tells Arjuna, for one who is a neophyte, karma is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, in that Ashtanga ladder, cessation of all material activity is said to be the means, because he has already reached that stage. This statement of Krishna may appear to confuse ordinary mortals like me, who neither understand yoga or Ashtanga Yoga or the final state of Bhakti Yoga. So Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada gave a beautiful explanation for this sloka. Concerning the eightfold yoga system, this is what Prabhupada says. Attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation, to regulative principles of life and practice of different postures or asanas, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities definitely lead to achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities, can easily reach the goal of Bhakti Yoga. Beautiful. The answer is given here. When the Ashtanga Yoga cleans up our act, it gives us the mental discipline. And once the discipline makes you focus completely into dhyana, from dharana to dhyana, dhyana to samadhi, then you have already reached the status where you can only be doing one thing, that is Bhakti Yoga, Prema Bhakti, and Bhagavan is in front of you. The meditation restrains the mind. The same Krishna, further down in the same canto, he says, Yada viniyatam chittam atmanyeva avatishtate nispragaha sarvakamebhyo yukta iti uchyate tada. When a yogi, by practice of this Ashtanga Yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Krishna explains that both process of yoga, the contemplative and the active, begin with learning how to control the mind, which is essentially dhyana or meditation. That's the meaning of this. Yatha deepo nivatasto nengate sopamamrita yogino yat chittasya yugyato yogamatmanaha. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be very well established in Ashtanga Yoga. It's just like a lamp in a windless place does not waver. Because the lamp is very steady, there is no wind to disturb it. So the transcendentalist, whose mind is completely controlled, in a controlled environment, remains steady in his meditation to take him to the path of samadhi. Such meditation, Krishna admits verily that it is very difficult, but one can achieve it through an arduous effort. Asamsayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. It's undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is a difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled by the very same yoga which we talked about, Arjuna, and who strives by appropriate means, is assured of success. Because the mind is controlled and everything else is automatically following. Asamyata atmana yogo dushprapya iti me matihi vasyatmana duyatata sakyo avaptum upayata. For one whose mind is unbridled again, realization is not easy. But I am able to control, once the mind is controlled, I am able to control you and take you to Prema Bhakti. This is my opinion. This is what, not my opinion. It is Krishna's opinion. That's how he says in the slokam, this is my opinion, Arjuna. It's up to you to find out that path. Tapasvibhyo adiko yogi jnanibhyo madhotigaha. Karmibhyascha adiko yogi tasmat yogi bhavarjuna. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, Arjuna, in all circumstances, better be a yogi. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mataha. And of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Again he says, Arjuna, this is my opinion. A neophyte like me gets more confused, although Krishna seems very clear that yoga and yoga sadhana helps to prepare and transit one to self-realization. As far as the journey of a Jivan Mukta to Brahmanda is concerned, Sukha Brahma makes it very clear. Ragayatas svaviryani tirthapada priyashravaha ahuda ivame shigram darshanam yati chetasi. I said earlier, I begin to chant your holy activities and nothing else matters to me. I don't need any other path. I will automatically be at your feet. Of course, this is somewhat contradictory to what I said in the last 55 minutes, but that is Sukha's interpretation to Parikshit as to how to get close to Bhagavan. So there are two beautiful abhangas, one by Jnaneshwara and one by Tukaram. Both talk about the simplistic way of reaching Bhagavan, and they also mention about various sadhanas like Samadhi, Sadhana, Sanjeevana, Nama, Shanti, Daya, Sama, Sarvam, Bhuti. This is what Jnanadeva says. Finally, what does it really mean? Bhakti Marga Nita Haripanti. As long as satsang is there, everything else is taken care of. I don't have to worry about anything else. This is what Jnaneshwar says. Same thing, Tukaram also said, beautiful song which Priya sings, Hechi Dana Dega Deva Tuja Visarana Ava. In that Tuka says, he only wants one thing, Santa Sangha Dehi Sada. I don't want anything else. Santa Sangha Dehi Sada. Give me Satsangam. Like the way you are all there attentively encouraging me and listening to me, that's all the Satsanga Dehi Sada. Bhagavane Satsanga Dehi Sada. Thank you. Hare Krishna Guru